Okay, Rob Brown here with you on this Tuesday morning. Sidelines, along with Jimmy Hodge. We're going to be talking next 2 hours. Nothing but college football. Looking forward to it. Connor O'Gara will be joining us momentarily. Saturday down south. He's down in Orlando. Covers national college football. Really, really good journalist. Knows what he's doing, knows the sport. It's going to be great hearing from him. We'll be joined in the second segment. John Talty, senior sports editor and SEC insider for AL.com. Today is the launch of his book, Nick Saban, The Leadership Lessons of Nick Saban, Why He's the Greatest Coach. This will be good. I know he's going to be busy today, and I really appreciate him taking time with us to share on a very, very big day for John Talty. In the top of the second hour, Rodney Orr checks in with us, Tider Insider down in Tuscaloosa. Talked with Rodney yesterday and Gary Harris. Rodney will be on with us, giving us the latest from Alabama's practices, what's going on, some recruiting updates. That's always interesting to see because there's always something big happening there, it seems like. And in the fourth segment, Olin Buchanan, TexAgs.com out in College Station. Love having him. Not afraid to ask any question. Olin Buchanan always brings us a lot of good information. Native of White Oak, Texas. Remember, a town of 2,500 people with a football stadium that holds 5,000. They've got their priorities right in the state of Texas. I want to thank all of our sponsors like Gateway Tire and Service Centers. They go the distance for the customers and the communities where they do business. Support the Boy Scouts of America and Reforest, Mississippi. All right. Follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live. You follow us, we follow you. Again, that is at sidelines_live. Those of you watching, and if you're watching now, obviously you're on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. We'll be with you 8 to 10 a.m. Central, 9 to 11 a.m. east of the Chattahoochee. And we are every Monday through Saturday, and Kicks 96 FM, Alexander City, Central Alabama, Country FM on Saturdays, and 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta right after this. So should be joined momentarily by Connor O'Gara. Before that, Jimmy, SEC Network, busy. Takeo Spikes had his debut yesterday with Alyssa Lang on SEC Network. I give him an A. I thought he did a damn good job. He knows football, but more than anything, like I was telling Roman Harper yesterday, he and Roman together look like they are still in shape to where they could suit up and play. And they both really know the game. And I thought what Takeo Spikes said yesterday, interesting, Jimmy. I know you're a big fan of what Mike Leach does. I didn't realize this. 7 receivers are back from Mississippi State from last season that had 200 or more yards receiving. So they throw the ball around a lot, and it's really a de facto running game is what it is. But I think Mississippi State, everybody remembers what you did last year. They're looking at what they did in the bowl game against Texas Tech. But we got a minute or two before Colin should be on here with us right now. But, Jimmy, when you look around at Mississippi State as Colin comes on, do you think that they're going to win more games than they won last year?
It's just hard to say. I mean, the West is really tough.
Yeah.
It's just a question of, replacing that 25% of your roster that you lost.
Yeah.
And what guys are going to fit in, obviously, to the offensive scheme. And as far as that bowl game goes against Texas Tech, I mean, their chances, I thought, were pretty much eliminated when their tackles didn't choose to participate in the game because of the upcoming draft and so forth.
Say
and
it,
it's
Jimmy.
just hard to it's just hard to win a game against a team that's really eager to play in the game because they're from the Big 12 and it's like when the Big 10 plays the SEC in a bowl game, even though to most fans and a lot of teams, if they're not in the playoff, they're going to try to win the game, but it's not going to be played in, let's say, kind of a really urgent mode. I mean, when you've got a chance to win the national championship, I mean, you're giving it everything until the clock hits triple zeros. But in a lot of those bowl games, people look at it differently. And that their first round offensive lineman, Charles Cross, I believe, didn't play in the game, and then they had another starter that didn't play in it, and it really can affect you. But as far as this year goes, having Will Rogers and being able to run that air raid offense effectively really can make it difficult to defend. But their defense obviously is going to have to be solid anyway, because we know all the rules favor the offense. So a lot of the
Jimmy
failure.
Pick those up. Pick those up, because Connor O'Gara's on with us. And Connor, welcome to Sidelines. Appreciate you taking time out to join us this morning. And Jimmy, I'd asked him a question before you came on about Mississippi State. And I heard Takeo Spikes talking on SEC Network last night. They have 7 receivers coming back that had 200 or more yards receiving. Jimmy, you're making a great case about it. In the bowl game, everybody remembers what they did, but what are your thoughts on Mississippi State? And then we'll get going from there.
Yeah, I thought I was highest on Mississippi State of anybody at SEC Media Days, because I had them finishing 4th in the SEC West. And I guess if you're predicting them to finish 4th in the West, you're having them ahead of an Ole Miss and LSU, which a lot of people just do not want to be able to accept. But I'm higher on Mississippi State because I love what they return on the offensive front, from being able to have a quarterback as experienced as Will Rogers. Obviously, you return basically everybody in the ground game, whatever that is, in a Mike Leach air raid offense. And then a lot of those receivers who had big time plays for you. You, of course, have to replace Mekhi Polk, who is kind of their deep threat. He developed into that. And then the big question, as you were just talking about, replacing somebody like Charles Cross, who protected Will Rogers' blindside. We saw in 2020 what it looked like when they couldn't block a 3-man front, and they played down to every single team that they faced. And if that's the case again, then they're going to be in big trouble, because the obvious game plan to stop them is just drop 8 coverage. But this really comes back to my belief that they're going to be even better defensively. I don't think people realize the amount of pass rushers that they lost to injury at the start of the season, and how they were able to still keep things afloat with Zach Arnett. They need to be better against the pass, and I think having pass rushers like that healthy will help. But they were the number 3 run defense in the SEC last year, and I love Jet Johnson. He's a guy who's going to become a household name in the SEC this year. They return Manuel Forbes as their lockdown corner on the outside as well. So I'm a believer in Mississippi State. I love Zach Arnett's defense, and I think that they could be an 8-4 potential team. But a program that has 1 winning season in SEC play in the 21st century always gives the pundits pause in the preseason when we do these projections.
Well, if anything, and I'll say this: last year they go on the road and win at Texas A&M and win at Auburn, especially in Auburn after being down 28-3. They're resilient, and they got a coach who is certainly interesting. Jimmy, along the lines of what Colin just said, we all know about Dan Mullen's 9 years there. He had a lot of success, but only 1 winning season in SEC play in this millennium. That blows my mind. But I didn't mean to cut you off. We had a little issue with Colin's the StreamYard there on our end. But I think Mississippi State, their defense is what I'm more excited about than the offense. Would you agree, Jimmy?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not critical like it was 15, 20 years ago for a defense to hold opponents to 15 to 20 points a game, because again, the schemes offensively are so much more sophisticated, and you have the 4 and 5 wideouts. It's hard to have 4 or 5 speedy corners, or lots of times safeties that you hope have corner speed being matched up in man coverage against these really good teams. And you have to cover all 53 1/3 yards of the field from a horizontal standpoint, because teams are using every inch of that space that they can
Yeah.
to create bad matchups, and one-on-one matchups, as we all know, most of the time, the defender is not going to make the play because, again, these guys are running 4.5. They're really elusive. They're very athletic, and again, it's just tough. So now, even with Alabama or Georgia, if they just hold opponents to the mid to upper 20s, they're going to just about win every game.
Yeah.
So it's a different standard now for defenses. But yeah, I mean, I think Ole Miss, Mississippi State is, got a solid core of players, and yeah, the Zach Arnett, the young defensive coordinator they brought in from San Diego State, I think's really injected a lot of energy into their program, and they really play hard. And for a lot of these guys, just getting experience in SEC competition, I mean, just game experience, it's so much more valuable than working hard every day in practice, because it's just not the same. On game day, you're playing against elite athletes, and if you just work harder and get better each week, you're going to improve anyway, because again, the SEC West is the best there is.
Jimmy, I agree. Connor, let's talk now your overviews on the conference right now. I mean, we got you on here because you really know what you're talking about. So, and I mean, Jimmy made a great point about the energy Zach Arnett brings to the defense. But let's look at the SEC East. You're down there right near Gainesville, but you've got a good grasp of the whole league. So let's start with what you think about the Florida Gators. I mean, nobody can see a whole lot at practice, but Billy Napier is a detail guy. He keeps a notebook from the previous year on the same day and date, so he doesn't make mistakes that he made a year earlier. He's got 55 or 60 people on the support staff. Kind of give us your takeaway, what that can do to improve Florida, because their fans and their expectations are really high.
They need stability. They don't need a year one in which they go 9-3 and Anthony Richardson is instantly a Heisman contender and they're playing in a down to the wire game against Georgia. That's not realistic. And if Florida fans expect that in year one, and if they're going to make their determinations of who Billy Napier is as a head coach, they're looking at this all wrong. I think there are a lot of Florida fans who have that perspective and who understand, look, haven't had a coach last longer than 6 years in Gainesville since Steve Spurrier left. That's a problem. It doesn't matter if you get off to this great year one start, because as we saw with Jim McElwain, as we saw with Dan Mullen, what does that really get you in the end? It doesn't get you to a year 5. And if Billy Napier can establish this foundation, which is getting more talent in the building, they got that new facility upgrade. It's what, $80 million new facility project that they have that's going to be able to yield positive results for them. They need to be able to establish those relationships at the powerhouse schools in the state of Florida that Dan Mullen couldn't, at IMG Academy, at St. Thomas Aquinas. You need to be able to get more quarterback talent in the door, and then you need a coach that's able to recognize, hey, this is good enough, this isn't good enough. When you have your worst defense since the Woodrow Wilson administration, you fire that defensive coordinator. You don't bring him back and say, you know what? It was a COVID year and everybody's just too down on him. No, you fire Todd Grantham. That's what you're supposed to do if you're a program like that. Listen to Ryan Day talk about that and say that a Rose Bowl victory isn't good enough for Ohio State. And that's why we fired our defensive coordinator, who was beloved by fans the year before. But that's why we go out and we get Jim Knowles and pay him $2 million annually because we want to win a national championship. If you're going to be at Florida, there's a standard that you have to be able to hold your program to. Billy Napier in year one is not going to come in and win 9 games. I think they have an 8-win ceiling. I think 7-5 is a lot more realistic when we think everybody else in the East is getting better. And I think that they have a lot of questions to answer defensively. Can Anthony Richardson have those moments, those flashes wherein he looks like one of the better players in the country? I think that he's capable of that. I think he's still going to make his mistakes, but set your expectations low if you're a Florida fan in year one.
Well, along that line, you look at programs that have that initial win 11 or 12 games in year one, and then they're an 8-5 program year after year after year. Golly, Auburn comes to mind on that with Gus Malzahn. I mean, that if it happens too big, too early, Colin, you're right. It can be a detriment.
Well, there's actually no correlation with year one success or failure as it relates to long term. There's not. There are coaches who have been really good year one, and they've been able to withstand that and been able to sustain their success. Ryan Day comes to mind. Even Dabo Swinney when he took over at Clemson, where he kind of just inherited that job, and he's able
Yeah.
to take that thing off. Jimbo Fisher is another example. Lincoln Riley's another example at Oklahoma, where that first year at Oklahoma, Baker Mayfield
Alan,
won Heisman.
can you hold these thoughts real quick? We're going to take a quick break. I want you to come back because you just nailed it about these coaches. You named a bunch of them, and there's a reason why or they do or do not have success. We're going to talk about it after this quick break.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown, Jimmy Hodge back here talking with Colin O'Gara, Saturday Down South. And Colin, you were making a great point. You reeled off a number of great coaches like Lincoln Riley for sure, Dabo Swinney, who came in kind of midway through the 08 season. But pick up from there. You're on fire.
I haven't been called Colin this much since like my third grade substitute teacher came in and like didn't know that my name was Connor, and she just kept calling me Colin.
Connor, holy cow, Connor! Sorry about
You're
that.
good.
I was sitting there. There was somebody's name on a piece of paper. There's the name Colin. I looked at Connor. I apologize, man.
No, you're good. You're good. I think that's something that's worth remembering with year one coaches, because there's going to be a lot of bad takes about year one coaches. All these high profile jobs. We have 8 programs in college football that have a year one coach where those programs played for a national championship in the 21st century. And that technically includes Virginia Tech, because they played in a national championship on like January 4th, 2000, that Michael Vick team. So that's why everybody's going to want to rush to judgment. We're going to want to judge Marcus Freeman. We're going to want to judge Mario Cristobal. We're going to want to judge Lincoln Riley based on how year one goes. And there's just no direct correlation. And you could find examples all over the place. Gus Malzahn, year one. You can go back into the archives and find what Les Miles did in year one at LSU. And Les Miles ends up being, a really solid coach. Nick Saban ends up being a really, the best coach we've ever seen in sports history. Obviously, his year one struggles. Kirby Smart lost to Vandy at home in year one. All right. Like, we forget these types of things. And I think that's just important perspective to remember, because we're going to want to project these coaches. And I think there's a decent chance, maybe decent's a little bit too strong, but I think there's at least a chance that Billy Napier ends up being the best hire from this 2021 cycle, despite all of these massive names that we're talking about at the top, with Brian Kelly, with Lincoln Riley, Mario Cristobal, of course, Dan Lanning, another one in Oregon.
I want to ask you, I think the narrative on Auburn is that Harsin, he doesn't know what he's doing. Well, you go back and look at the games Auburn lost last year. When they were 6-2, 12th in the country going to A&M, they didn't give up a defensive touchdown. It was a scoop and score in the fourth quarter and 4 field goals. So Brian Harsin, he can't coach. He doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, that is I don't believe that narrative. And it's not just because I'm an Auburn fan, because I'm harder and more critical of Auburn than I am of any other school, because it's my alma mater. But the guy can coach. He's got some new coaches in there. He's got to recruit better. That's a given. But look at those games Auburn lost last year. They're up 28-3 to Mississippi State, and they allow State to fight their way back and beat them. Then the South Carolina game, you're up 14-0. You lose that one. You lose the Alabama game. You lose the bowl game. You lost 3 games in a row at the end by a total of 10 points. Auburn makes a few adjustments, combined with the defense, I think will be, as good or better than last year, Connor. They could win 9 games this year. And if Auburn starts off 5-0, like any team, the narrative changes, and also recruits begin to give Auburn a second look, even if they're already committed, like a lot of these kids are to Penn State or Clemson or other out-of-state schools.
I'll say this about Brian Harsin. I give him credit for the way that he has responded to an admittedly awkward situation, the coup to get him fired, what happened in February. I think he's done a lot of things right. And I loved what he said at SEC Media Days. That was as direct as I've ever seen a coach be. And considering that was a year removed from him answering 3 questions in a 35-minute media session, that is a massive 180. And he is recognizing the need to be more transparent. I'll give him credit there. The problem is that in this business, where it comes down to wins and losses, there are things that impact that more than whether or not you know how to get your team fired up to be able to play a game. The issue that I have with Brian Harsin is that you need to be able to recruit at the quarterback position, and you need to recognize the importance of that position. And if you think you're going to out-scheme every single team in the SEC, go ask Dan Mullen about that. Okay, it can very much cost you when you get to a big-time job where those expectations are different. I think that Brian Harsin is in a very tough spot with his job on the line. I'm not saying his job should be on the line. If my job was on the line, I wouldn't want it to depend on Zach Calzada, TJ Finley, or Robbie Ashford at quarterback. I wouldn't. In the SEC West, that's not good. That's not going to be good enough. If I'm Brian Harsin, I don't like the fact that I'm on my 3rd offensive coordinator, despite the fact that I've had this job for a year and a half. That's a sign that you're probably doing something wrong. I don't like the fact that Derek Mason up and left and resigned before he even had the Oklahoma State defensive coordinator job, even though after 1 year, you had some pretty good success there with what they were able to do defensively. Those things are troubling. And in that division that has no room for error, I worry about Brian Harsin's future. 9-3 would be a miracle season for this Auburn roster with the issues that they have at the wide receiver position, the issues that they have on the line of scrimmage, the issues that they have at quarterback. I think getting to 9-3 is a very tall task.
And I would agree. And I think the biggest thing is you've got to recruit. I think Brian Harsin I agree with you. And that's what I was going to say. He felt he could out-scheme the people down here. Look what I did at Boise. This is not Boise. This is not the Pacific Northwest. It is a totally different world. And the way I look at it in the SEC West, I mean, again, you look around the bar at 3 a.m, there's a Navy SEAL, there's a Delta guy, there's a Marine Recon. Who are you going to pick a fight with? There's no easy way out. You've got to worry, but what Auburn has to do is just get better players, and he has got to recruit. I mean, we have Jason Caldwell on a lot from inside the Auburn Tigers. It's the lack of those top 12, top 15 players. Why is your message not getting through to them? And I think the only cure for that is to win. And the biggest problem Auburn has, not this year, but next year, is the lack of offensive linemen, Colin. I mean, that's what scares you if you're an Auburn fan. But there are other teams in the league, and you're break down the West after Alabama. You just talked about Auburn, and we talked about Mississippi State. A&M, suddenly they are the school of the day. Everybody loves them. They were 8-4 last year. What do you think they're going to do this year? What's different this year from last year?
They're going to be the most overrated team in college football coming into this year. Well, them and USC. And depending on if you listen to the coaches poll, I guess Texas as well. But they're going to be overrated because I think they lost so much talent in the front seven. They lost the likes of Jaden Peavy, DeMarvin Leal. They had Mike Elko, their defensive coordinator, who led the number 3 defense in college football last year, and that was sort of lost in the shuffle. Everybody's kind of assuming, oh, well, they're going to get an upgrade at quarterback in the post-Zach Calzada era. Therefore, they're going to instantly be better, and they're ready to make that next step. Disagree. I don't think that we've ever looked at teams that have been competing for a playoff spot and said, you know what, that freshman class is really the difference with this team this year. Jimbo recruited a historic class. it's not going to be the thing that makes or breaks whether or not they're able to have a top 10 finish this year. It's just not. We don't see that, especially in the trenches where they really had that unbelievable defensive line class. So that's where I kind of question this evaluation of A&M. I think we saw Georgia win the national championship. I think we saw, hey, who's next? Who's the team that could win their first national championship since 1939? Jimbo Fisher had this historic class, and it's really difficult to find that number 4 team nationally because it's Alabama, it's Ohio State, and it's Georgia, and it's everyone else. And so I think everybody kind of jumped the gun with A&M, who has a championship window, but that championship window is more like 2023 and 2024, as opposed to this year, where I would bet more on them finishing 8-4 than I would them being able to break through and win an SEC title.
Yeah, and that is we're going to have Olin Buchanan on later in the show. We'll talk about it, but yeah, they're getting a lot of hype, but I don't see it. Jimmy, got time for a quick question with Colin before we have to let him go, but great insight.
Yeah, well,
Colin.
There was a reason in SEC media days that despite what a lot of people think about A&M, and you're right. I mean, people go overboard on the success of maybe one big recruiting class because so many of those guys aren't ready just to step in and be a significant contributor. But there's a reason that Alabama got 87% of the media votes to be a SEC West champion, and Georgia got 89%. It's because they are at a separate level from everybody else. But who do you see in the West as somebody that could surprise? Because I was, it really got my attention when, at the last minute, Brian Kelly got that LSU job, because now he's at a place where, you don't have the entrance requirement restrictions, that he always had at Notre Dame. And he's at a program where it doesn't matter really what the year is. LSU's always going to trot really good, talented football players out there. And I know they have a crowded quarterback room, but I think their room has a much higher ceiling than Texas A&M. And if they could just keep Brennan in one piece, and that has been a problem his whole career, I think they could really be solid and cause some problems. And then Arkansas, they do have a quarterback coming off a great year. They're definitely on an upward momentum swing. We know the job Sam Pittman's done there. And those are two schools that kind of come to mind for me. And of course, Ole Miss is always going to be different tough offensively to deal with. And they feel really good about what they have coming in defensively. But again, they have a lot of guys that have to get game experience in this conference and in this division. So who do you see, kind of making a big run in the West other than Alabama?
Yeah, Arkansas is the team that I think is second in the West. And I think that watching what they did last year, taking that next step, watching KJ Jefferson really blossom, go back and watch that Ole Miss game. You'll fall in love with the kid. I mean, it was incredible watching the way that he went from this guy who lacked confidence, was being questioned about his conditioning coming into the year. Can he run Kendall Briles' offense? And the way that he blossomed into a star in this league. In my opinion, he's one of the 10 best quarterbacks in college football returning. He was the leading rusher on the team that led Power 5 in rushing, which I don't think people fully realize how difficult that is to do while playing the quarterback position, while having a 21-4 TD9T ratio, while having one of the best quarterback ratings in the country. I'm a KJ believer. I think their defense is also going to get better. I love the addition of Drew Sanders and what he can bring as an edge rusher. They've really lacked that kind of go-to edge rusher, guy that can really disrupt the backfield and rush the passer well consistently. And I think getting him from Alabama was immensely important. Returning Jalen Catalon in Bumper Pool is going to be big for them as well. But I think Arkansas is that team that can take that next step, because they were there in every non-Georgia game that they played. And that includes on the road against Alabama. That game in Fayetteville, when Alabama comes to town, is going to be one of the games of the year in the SEC. I truly believe that fan base is going to be ready to go. Talk about a coach that people buy into. Sam Pittman's that guy. If you don't have Sam Pittman as one of your best 25 coaches in the country, I think you're just wildly discounting what he's been able to do in his first 2 years. So yeah, Arkansas is a team that I have as number 2 in the West, taking that next step, looking like the team that is ready to be able to compete for a New Year's Six Bowl and perhaps be on the level that Ole Miss was at last year, wherein they had, that 10-win season, best regular season win total in program history. So yeah, I'm definitely high on the Hogs, and I think that they're going to finish better than A&M in the West.
Connor O'Gara, one more question for you. And I'm with you about KJ Jefferson. Last year, I think in the last 257 pass attempts, he only had 1 interception. And he's 20 pounds lighter. He's an effective player. But I think Sam Pittman is indicative of the importance of having a coach who understands that a team is built up front on the offensive and defensive line. He was a great recruiter and a great coach when he was at Georgia. He'd been at Arkansas before. He was at Tennessee with Derek Dooley for a while. Sam Pittman, I think what he's done at Arkansas is made it okay to think big. I mean, you look at 59 to 89, that 30-year period, Arkansas finished in the top 10, 12 times, I believe, another 7 or 8 times in the top 15, top 17 teams. They won a dozen conference championships in that time frame. So it's like it's okay for Arkansas people to believe, but you look at the 30 years they've been in the SEC. What is it that's held them back? The inability to recruit the Deep South, or just coaches that think big enough? What do you think it is?
I thought A&M coming into the SEC was actually kind of a lost in the shuffle reason for why Arkansas struggled throughout the 2010s. It's trying to find that identity. Arkansas has always been able to recruit the state of Texas really well, but now that you have an SEC program in the state of Texas, that kind of impacted them. And then obviously the way that things played out with Bobby Petrino, who knows what their trajectory would have looked like in the 2010s had that whole thing not blown up. But if you kind of hear some of the stories about Bobby Petrino, you're like, he probably wasn't going to be for long. And the things that he was doing from a personal standpoint, he was never going to be that decade-long coach at Arkansas. And then the Chad Morris hire, the Brett Bielema hire, the way that those kind of played out, you just kind of realized this is a program that was struggling for its identity. And now they have that identity with Sam Pittman. And it's not just as simple as having this great offensive line. Brett Bielema wanted to have this great, defensive line, offensive line, wanted to really beat these teams up front and in the trenches. That was his plan because it worked at Wisconsin. Well, you still need scheme. And that's why Kendall Briles is so important with what they try and do from a tempo standpoint, the way that they're able to spread teams out, the way that they're able to keep teams honest. Now, can they do that and stretch the field in a post-Traylon Burks world? That's a big question. You need Jaden Hazelwood. You need Matt Landers, these 2 transfers to really step up and kind of do some of the things that Traylon Burks did, because he was one of the best Arkansas players ever, in my opinion. So I think that Sam Pittman has found that identity, and I think they're capable of taking that next step in 2022.
Hey, Connor O'Gara, and I apologize. I keep thinking Colin Farrell because I'm Irish, I'm Scotch Irish, but man, I hope you will come back on. You are fantastic. And God, your football. And Connor, tell people how they can follow you, and look forward to having you on again next week if we can do it. This has been fantastic stuff. And I'm with you on Arkansas. It's not because I'm over here at Red River Ford Toyota and win, but I'm just a huge fan of Sam Pittman. You're right. He fits Arkansas like, Marshall Dillon, like Matt Dillon fit, the Marshall on Gunsmoke. That's how much these people over here absolutely love him. But let them know how they can follow you on Twitter and everything else.
Yeah, I appreciate that. At CJ O'Gara on Twitter, SaturdayDownSouth.com. We have tons of great content that's going up right now. We have top 25 week, top 25 players in the SEC, top 25 teams, top 25 coaches nationally, all these different things, top 25 draft prospects. It is a huge week of coverage on Saturday Down South. And if you're a fan of other conferences, we have a Big Ten site, SaturdayTradition.com, Saturday Out West is our Pac-12 site, and then Saturday Roads, our ACC site. So yes, we have just a lot of great coverage brought to you by Saturday Football. And yeah, follow us on Twitter at SatDownSouth as well.
No shortage of excitement, man. I mean, I know people think, the fans are upset. Not from what I can tell. And you got me really fired up. Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South, folks. Great stuff. And we're going to be right back after this quick commercial break with John Talty, senior sports editor and SEC insider of AL.com. Be right back.
Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BBG for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back with you along with Jimmy Hodge. Great segment there with, I'll tell you one thing, Connor O'Gara knows his football Saturday down south out of Orlando. And now we're joined by another one who knows it, senior sports editor and SEC insider, AL.com, John Talty down in Birmingham. And John, big day for you. Congratulations. You're launching your book. I would say new book. I know you've written some other ones, but this is your newest book, Leadership Lessons, Nick Saban, Why He's the Greatest Coach. And you are probably a busy man today. And so thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule, and tell people what I want to do is help you, how people can get the book and see you. And if you're doing book signings or whatever.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so the book, The Leadership Secrets of Nick Saban, How Alabama's Coach Became the Greatest Ever, it's available for purchase everywhere today. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it on Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Target, your independent bookstores. You can do it. All the places that you would possibly find a book, you can buy the book there today. And, as of right now, I've got 2 kind of book signing, book events scheduled right now. I've got one in Birmingham on Thursday. It's at a bookstore called The Little Professor. And then I'm doing one the following week down in Mobile. There's a great bookstore down there called Page and Palette. And so that's what I've got scheduled for right now, but I'm sure I'll be, making some other stops along the way. And, really just super excited for people to get this book in their hands. It's been a long journey to get to this moment. And, it just kind of feels like being a kid on Christmas. You just, you can't wait for everybody to get your presents and, see what they think about them.
Well, the writing a book, Lauren Smith is on with us a lot. He's writing a book right now about Kirby Smart in Alabama. I mean, Georgia's national championship season from last year. And he's been holding up in some tough places like St. Simon's Island so he can get away. And that's going to be released. It's going to be a few more months before that's released. But how much time does it take on an average day on top of your duties with AL.com as senior sports editor and SEC insider? You're all over the place. What are you getting, about 4 or 5 hours of sleep, maybe?
Yeah, it's not a lot. I can tell you I was up at 4:30 this morning, ready to go. So it's not a lot. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the biggest challenges because, especially if you look at when I started writing this book, around January 2021, there's a lot that's happened in that time frame. We've had some major realignment, which I've written about, TV contracts, hirings, firings. My day job keeps me pretty busy, and
slightly.
So it wasn't like there was a ton of extra time just laying around. But that's what was. I had to be intentional with my time, and I had to find opportunities to to do things when I was able to. And so that was working late at night. It was doing weekend stuff. It was if things were a little quiet with work, I was working on the book. I didn't really give myself much of a break for about a year straight. And so, by the end of the book, my final edits and everything were this past February. Like, it's probably the most burnt out I've ever been from a work standpoint, and needed a little time to kind of take a step back and back off some of that stuff, just because I kind of ran myself into the ground a little bit. But it was a fun process overall. I enjoyed writing the book, and now it's the really fun part where it's actually out there and people can buy it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're like the farmer who's planted and nurtured and watered, and God willing, the crop's going to come up and you're going to make some money. And you should. You've worked, from what I've talked to you about before last week when Jimmy and I had you on, a ton of research goes into this. And as any true grit journalist knows, it's not about getting it first, it's about getting it right and your sources. So I think everyone's looking forward to reading this, and I'm telling everybody I know about it. And Jimmy, I know you got a question for John Talty. Let's go.
Yeah, I was really interested about the time frame that was involved from just the moment that you decided, hey, I think I'd like to write a book on Nick Saban, considering the fact that, when you see him during his media appearances and all that, he can seem kind of intimidating and not easy to get through to for a lot of media members. And so how did you, let's say, approach the Alabama people with the model? Because they obviously had to get his thoughts on it. You had to go through a couple of layers, obviously, to get farther than the initial, idea. And then when you did actually get to start the project with him, what were you expecting as far as just him opening up like apparently he has in this book? And at what point in time, when you started working with him on it to get his, inner thoughts that not many people know about, at what point did you realize, hey, I think this could be something special as far as just the general public getting to know things about Nick Saban that maybe we thought we'd never find out?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the process. Is as you work on it, you want to try to reveal things that haven't been revealed before. There have been other books written about Nick Saban. There have been plenty of stories, in newspapers and magazines, on TV about the guy. And one of the things that I wanted to set out to do was to provide the most complete picture possible of who this guy is. And, be able to show not only the how, but the why he does what he does. And so I think there were some different moments, throughout the process where you felt like, whether it was talking to former players, former coaches, whoever it might be, where, I've covered, Alabama for a good bit now. And so I feel like a pretty good sense as to, what people know about this guy and what they don't. And so there are these moments where you're talking to someone and they tell you something, you're like, oh man, I don't think anybody's ever heard that before. Like, that's a really good story. And you kind of, jot it down in your head, like, all right, I need to come back to that. And there were those moments throughout the process. And those were the really fun days when you're talking to somebody who is just really giving you stuff that you've never, heard or read anywhere before. And that's when you're like, all right, I've got something here.
John, when you go and cover a team, whether it's Alabama or Georgia, Auburn, Ole Miss, whoever, your typical day on a game day is what, about an 18-hour day. You're up early, and then there's no limit, is there, to the number of words you can put in a column? I would hope not, because to tell those stories behind the scenes, you can only tell them if you've lived them, been there, and been a part of it. And that's what makes having someone like you on special, is because you're out there doing it, and experiencing it. Why have so many people quit doing that? Just because it's easy?
Well, I mean, I think there's, you could look back to, if you really want to go back, I don't know, 20 plus years or so, you can look at the rise of online journalism, which has created a lot of opportunities for a lot of people, which I think has been great in many ways. But in some of the other ways, it's allowed people to, comment on things without having to, take the traditional path that a lot of us have taken, in which, you start as a high school reporter, a recruiting reporter, and you work your way up. And so I don't think a lot of people have, the basis that they used to do what we do. And I think that's unfortunately led to, some challenges, and the type of journalism and coverage that we see. But, I try to do things the right way. I hope people appreciate that. And, I hope that people, appreciate the way that I went about this book and the things that I covered in it.
Well, the bottom line is it shows up in your commentary and your insight, because, a lot of times people will say they're going to ask another player on the team about another player's injury. And I remember years ago, a wise reporter on TV said, no, you go ask him, and it's not always easy to do that, but it shows. And when people, I know you've got to get going, so let us know, but when you're out there covering a story, you can't think about, well, I don't want to make them mad. You got to tell the story. You got to tell the truth. There are two kinds of people. There are people that'll sign off on every bad idea you come up with in life because they want to go to your beach house. They want to be your friend. Then there are people that are truth brokers. Hey, does the dress make me look fat? You betcha. I wouldn't wear it. And it's not always easy to do that, is it?
No, not at all. And but I think that's an important part of what we do. I didn't get in this to, be friends with famous people. I got in it to tell interesting stories. And that's what I've tried to do. And that's been a big part of my career. And so, I do have to get going here, but I really appreciate you guys having me on. Always enjoyed talking to you guys. And, if I can ever be of any help in the future, just reach out.
Let's do it and keep us posted on the progress of the book. And congratulations.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it, guys.
You bet. That is John Talty, senior sports editor and SEC Insider, AL.com. Big day for John, launching his book on Nick Saban. And he mentioned Barnes & Noble's, Books A Million, Target. It's going to be all over the place. Leadership Lessons of Nick Saban. So check it out. It'll be worth reading. I can tell John has put a lot into it. And Jimmy, what was cool growing up? You and I are lucky, and a lot of our listeners are. You got to read the columnists, the sports writers who went out and told the stories. And I'll tell you a cool story. I was with my friend Harold Grader, who's on the show with us from time to time, executive vice president of the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. We were down at SEC Media Days, and we were talking, and he was a young, maybe 22 years old, in college, working at WMC TV5 in Memphis. As one of the sports guys on, doing the news, Action News 5 in Memphis. And he got a call, hey, come over to the house. I want to introduce you to Alabama's new coach. He goes over there, and there's Ray Perkins in the den in Memphis. I mean, wow, thank you. But it's, you build your sources and connections. And so when those big stories come about, you're at the top of the list for them. And I hope John's doing, going to continue to do it. He is doing it, but get out there and go find the stories. And he made a great point. I didn't become a sports writer to meet famous people. I did it to write about interesting people and through things. And yeah, you meet them along the way. But Jimmy, what's really fascinating is as you do that, you don't think anything of it. You just think it's normal. And you realize that these coaches, these athletes, whatever, they're just like you are. I mean, they've got needs, desires, goals, ambitions, but I think it's critical when you write a story, make sure you get it right, not just splatter something out there to get it first and worry about it later. Jimmy.
Yeah, you certainly have to be aware of double, triple, quadruple checking in certain cases your sources to make sure you're right on any issue that's going to involve a big name celebrity in the world of sports. And it's just shocking in many ways how that cardinal rule has been disregarded over the years. And what's even worse is that many times there are no consequences to be suffered from that, I guess, lack of, I don't know what you would say, follow up, or, I guess you could just say laziness, knowing that you can just throw something out there and get away with it. And when you get these types of projects out there in the public, I mean, for it to be successful, and the initial response to the Saban book has been overwhelmingly positive, because again, we have a never-ending thirst for this type of information. And when you have somebody that's willing to go out there and get in the trenches and get the information from people that were closest to Nick Saban, that were in the midst of practices, scrimmages, and all that, saw him up close, not always in the limelight, but we all know that the practices and behind the scenes preparation is critical in your ultimate success, because if you're not prepared to play a game on Saturday, chances are, even though you might have better players, you might come out on the short end. So, these type of projects are something that, even though they take a lot of work and they take a lot out of the individual that's writing it, at the end of the day, or you can look back 10, 15 years later, and just say, yeah, that was really worth it, because of, you just gave college football fans so much more knowledge about these guys than they ever thought they could get.
Well, yeah, and it's just like in play-by-play, and then you got a color man. And I saw on that More Than a Voice on SEC Network about the great radio announcers down through the decades covering the SEC schools. And when Bill Anderson was offered the job as color analyst at Tennessee, they told him, he said, well, what do I do? He said, just talk about the play that just happened. And that's all, that very simple, say John Ward would say, Willie Galt with a completion of 17 yards. Now it is 3rd and 6. And John Ward would say nothing. And Bill Anderson would say, great blocking on the right side of that Tennessee offensive line. They keep doing that, they're going to have success and make it really, really tough on Alabama the rest of this day. All right, Vols making a, I formation, blah, blah, blah. Well, color man, and keep it simple, and you don't want to, ask somebody what time it is and then tell you how the watch was made, and I think the less is more in a book. If the book takes 117 pages, so be it. If it takes 358, so be it. A column, 700 words, you can't limit greatness. If it's 4,000 words in a column, so be it. If you look at extreme, the better books that you read, I mean, some of them are pretty thick. Charlie Wilson's War. You ever want to know what's going on in the Middle East and really understand it? It's 538 pages. Okay. It's hard for some people to read, but when you read a great book, Jimmy, you're right. It's like lifting weights with your brain. Your vocabulary, and people judge you. It's a fact by the words you use and your vocabulary. All I can say every day is, thank you, Brother Stephen Schonhoff at Christian Brothers High School in 10th grade for shoving word wealth down our heads with that old green book with the red trim on it. But it's important, and you hear it over and over when you're watching people on TV, listening to them on the radio or whatever. Their vocabulary is either strong or it's poor, but it speaks volumes. Okay, so it's just true grit journalism. Go out there. If you're going to write a book, go do the research. Lauren Smith, I'm excited about his book launch about Georgia's national championship season. He spends a lot of time to get it right. We'll be right back with Rodney Orr of Tider Insider for the beginning of hour number 2 after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back here with you on hour number 2, Sidelines, on this Tuesday morning. Great stuff, great commentary there again in the first hour. Gotta love it. Connor O'Gara, man, calling him Colin. I'm thinking of Colin Farrell, but Colin O'Farrell. But Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South. Great. You need to pay attention. Subscribe. Saturday Down South really knows his football, as does John Talty, senior sports editor, SEC Insider, AL.com. We get Rodney on here in just a moment. I know he is on the run always, trying to keep up with what's going on at Alabama. Nick Saban already, that preseason poll came out yesterday. You got a bunch of SEC schools in there at the top of the list. Not a surprise, Alabama. I think Georgia's at 2 or 3, but A&M way up there. We're going to talk to Olin Buchanan. There's just, you can't help it, but there's just a lot of, when you look around, there are a lot of people. They got Alabama number 1. I get that. 9 starters back on defense, 72% of your guys. I mean, they're really, really good. They're going to be outstanding. A&M, I see them picked real high, and I see schools like LSU and Auburn real low. I'm not following. I'm not connecting the dots. Okay, I'm not. But Rodney Orr, you can make sense of everything. You can make the sunshine. You're the candy man. You are Tider Insider. Welcome to hour number 2. Your takeaways from the first few days of practice in Tuscaloosa. I know you've gotten to see stretching. I don't know beyond that what you've seen, but Nick Saban's already saying, look, you guys are out there picking us really high. We hadn't done anything yet. I like that approach. The only easy day was yesterday, and that wasn't easy.
Well, actually, we don't even have an opportunity to watch stretch anymore. So
the Iron Curtain
completely closed out the media. So, and that's fine. But you do hear things from observers, people that do get in, and it sounds like what Nick Saban is saying is accurate. I mean, obviously we've talked for months and months on your show about this team has got a lot of talent, but they've also, I think right now with some of the question marks at offensive tackle is, again, we're only 4 days in. We're just a few days in, so there's a long way to go to Utah State on September the 3rd. But I think that and receiver is certainly another area where not only do they have to get these guys ready to play, but they have to get them on the same page with Bryce Young and everything in sync offensively. So I think that's probably where we are right now in terms of, the offense. I think defensively, you've got a lot of returning players, obviously, a lot of leadership on that side of the ball and a lot of high expectations. Here's the funny thing. We've talked about Will Anderson and Dallas Turner on the outside as pass rushers, for forever. Okay, so now the buzz is, we know Chris Braswell had a huge spring. He's a guy that they're going to try to work in some packages in the pass rush, and he's a guy that I think could really blossom this year. You'll hear a lot about him, but there's another kid that redshirted last year as a freshman that got bigger, stronger, in his time off, even though he had some injuries. Keanu Coote, who is getting a lot of buzz right now as well. So that's you're talking about four guys right there that are catching a lot of buzz in terms of outside pass rushers.
Yeah. Well, you sounded like the beginning. Remember the beginning of the series, the $6 Million Man, bigger, stronger, faster. You're talking about these guys,
right?
And it is scary. And I was listening to Keo Spikes again this morning with Alyssa Lang on SEC Network, and he's talking about Alabama, Dallas Turner, Will Anderson, all these edge rushers, and it's scary. Frank Duffy has joined us. Frank, in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, where are you this morning?
I'm sitting here on my balcony in the beautiful French Quarter in New Orleans. I went out to Saints practice yesterday, got to watch them, but I did hear a report out of Baton Rouge yesterday morning that the practice was they felt like they were on the surface of the sun. It was so hot. It was the humidity was so bad. But I tell you what, man, I am hearing great words coming out of these practices. John Emery and our new running back from Penn State, Kane, are pushing each other. And a little something interesting. I heard Jaden Daniels was actually working with the first team yesterday for a little bit. So I don't think it's a fait accompli, to use a little of my Cajun French, that Miles Brennan is going to be the starting quarterback. Though I think that's eventually who's going to be. But a lot of goings on over here in Louisiana as we prepare for the season. Both professionally for the Saints and for, of course, our passionate love for the LSU Tigers.
Yeah, and hey, Rodney, yesterday we had Roman Harper on. He did play for the Saints, and he gave
great interview.
Yeah, he was fantastic. And Rodney, just and Jimmy and Frank and I are, we got you on because Alabama inside out. So I got to ask you, when we talked about Alabama, and they've got their schedule, it's the same every year in the West. Let's talk about that running back room. Can Trey Sanders ever be what he was before the car wreck? I mean, he's worked really hard to get back, but he came out as the number one running back in the country. I think John Embry at LSU was one of those top 2 or 3 guys as well. But man, if he's healthy, and you talk about Jahmyr Gibbs coming in from Georgia Tech, that makes Alabama that much better because they went to the national championship game last year with really one healthy scholarship running back.
Well, again, can he be that guy in terms of what he was coming out of high school? And right when he got here as a freshman, you remember he got here, they thought he was going to have a role that freshman year, and he broke his foot in camp. And then he got back from that and was really starting to come around in 2020 later in the season. And he looked like a guy that you were saying, hey, he's going to be the Trey Sanders we expected. And then right after the Mississippi State game, he had that accident, the car accident, that a lot of people thought he would never be able to play again. He was fortunate to survive.
Yeah.
And now he's just done an incredible job of, just fighting back. And I think that's a lot of valuable lessons that he's learned in his hardships. And so I'm not counting Trey Sanders out, okay?
Yeah.
Obviously, I think he can be in the rotation. Jahmyr Gibbs, you mentioned him. The things that he brings something different with the speed and elusiveness and all of those things. But you know what? Don't forget Jace McClellan either. Jace was the best back on that team, in my opinion, last year until he went down with that knee injury. And Jace is really, really good too. So those are 3 great backs. And I think also Roydell Williams bouncing back is big. They've got 2 freshmen, Jamarian Miller and Emmanuel Henderson as well. But, those guys that we mentioned, Gibbs, Trey, and, Jace, I think those are probably your top 3. And again, I don't want to say Roydell, leave him out, but we'll see.
Well, and what Gibbs did again behind that Georgia Tech line when you upgrade and get behind an Alabama line, I know y'all are working on trying to fit all the pieces together, get them to working right. The tackles, getting that new talent coming in. But you got to think him behind that Alabama offensive line. I mean, you're gonna see an even more explosive Gibbs than what you saw at Georgia Tech. And at Georgia Tech, I mean, he was kind of a one-man show back there. I think his ability to get out into the flat and be able to catch passes as well is going to give that ability to do dump offs. So I think Gibbs is going to have a tremendous year at Alabama. But as you know, when you go through that SEC West gauntlet of a schedule and then playing the two other teams in the East, you got to have several backs. You're going to have them.
Yeah,
no question. Listen, I think what you say about Gibbs is correct. I think he's going to do for the running back room what Jamison Williams did for the wide receivers last year, with his ability to create big plays, his speed, that dynamic ability that he has. I think that's what he's going to do. I think he'll be, again, I think you're going to see a rotation. Certainly, Nick Saban always has that. You mentioned the importance of that, but I think Gibbs can bring that dynamic element of big plays. So it's going to be interesting, but not only as a runner, but also, fielding some kickoffs.
Yeah. Return. He's a great return guy.
Yeah. Jimmy?
Well, when you've got that number of running backs, I mean, not many teams can offer that kind of depth, because we talked about the injuries at the position last year, and now with these guys back, the addition of Gibbs, and he is a great threat also out in the flat. When he gets the ball out there, I mean, one-on-one in space, and these days, not often is that defender going to be able to make the play unless it's near the sideline, and he can the defender can help use the sideline to force the guy, toward the middle to where, he can get help from the pursuit. But I agree. This is a really fascinating aspect of this team, because in my opinion, I thought Trey Sanders got better every time I saw him. And he might not be get back to 100%, but I tell you, I think he's there around the 90% mark. I mean, he just seems
healthier than he's been. That's for sure.
Yeah, he just seems to gain a lot of confidence every time that I see him. And then with this offensive line, I mean, we're hearing great things from Eric Wolford about how he's been able to really, I think, help these guys with their confidence, because we know last year was not exactly the standard Alabama expects from their offensive line, and it seems like they're getting better. And for that running game to go, I mean, those guys up front are going to have to get it done. So I think that's going to be a really interesting story to see how that dynamic works. And Rodney, I want to just make sure, I know it's more or less the same every single year, but is the camp schedule pretty much the same? They're going to have the first big scrimmage on Saturday, and then have the second and final scrimmage the following Saturday, which allows the coaches to go over the tape for a day or two, and then decide what their two deep is, and who their special teams guys are going to be, and then use the last 2 weeks to just fine tune for Utah State.
Yeah, that's the schedule. I mean, hey, listen, they got a big scrimmage on Saturday. That's going to be interesting. Looking forward to hearing some feedback on, how that goes. And I really think, as we're talking here, the wide receivers are something that I'm going to keep a real ear out for. And Cam Latu, the tight end, is out. He has a little meniscus injury of some sort that's going to keep him out for a short time. It's not going to be too long. But, how are they going to deal with that? Who steps up in this scrimmage? I mean, I think, Robbie Oots is a guy that's kind of got that old H-back, fullback combination type guy. I think he can be real sneaky. And what I mean by that, he's a big physical guy. He loves to block. He will knock your head off. That's one thing he does well. But he's a sneaky little receiver. I think and I say he's not little, he's 250 pounds, but he's sneaky as a receiver. I think he can be a little effective there. And also, Miles Kitzelman is a guy to kind of keep your ear out for, see how he develops. He's a guy that Alabama was out evaluating back in the spring at Hutchinson Community College in Kansas. They were evaluating Malik Benson, who they now have a commitment from, the number 1 JUCO wide receiver. And they spotted this 6'6" kid at tight end that really impressed them, was only a freshman last season. And they offered him on the spot. So he's here now going through camp, and he may be a guy that could be really effective as a blocker with this opportunity he has with Latu being out. So I've heard a lot about him. And another guy, and I'll mention this guy and then allow you guys to take it over. But Amari Nyblack, haven't heard much about him yet. There's not been a lot of buzz, to be honest with you, coming out of between those gates. They've kept it very quiet so far. But Amari Nyblack is a true freshman that he's a guy athletically that could be someone that when we get 4, 5, 6 games into the season, you're saying, wow, look at this guy. He's starting to become part of the offense as an H-back. He's kind of a Jaleel Billingsley type guy, but I think he's more focused than Jaleel. I think he's a better even athlete than Jaleel, and that's saying something because Jaleel could be really good. But remember that name, Amari Nyblack.
And this is we have you on here because you are Tighter Insider. Okay, Florida had Mr. Two Bits. Alabama has Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider. So trust me, if you had anything else to say it, we got a couple of minutes before we go to the break. I want to ask you about Alabama's linebackers. Linebacker position, and I referenced this yesterday. I was watching the 82 Iron Bowl, and I was looking at Eddie Lowe, Woodrow Lowe's younger brother, 5'11", 190 pounds. Frank Broyles and Keith Jackson, it's as good as it gets. I mean, it's like having, the Who and Led Zeppelin playing in your backyard when you're drunk. I mean, doesn't get any better. But talked about Frank Broyles goes, look at look at Eddie Lowe. He's not particularly big. He's 5'11", 190 pounds, but he's got those instincts. And a linebacker always is about the instinct. So, we don't see the guys like Dante Hightower, who weighed about 260 from Lewisburg or Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, who loves to sit up in a deer stand and just hunt and fish and stuff. But talk about linebacker and what kind of size and what you look for out of that room.
Well, I think, first of all, the leader is back, and that's Henry To'oTo'o inside. I think last year coming in the way he did a fantastic job. It's criticized some by Bama fans. You know how it goes here. You don't make every tackle. It's you're a flop.
Yeah.
But I thought Henry To'oTo'o, he led the team in tackles. He did a great job. I mean, he didn't even go through spring practice. He had to learn the system, but he was pretty well acclimated because he did play for Jeremy Pruitt, very similar stuff. So he didn't have maybe as much growing to do and learning in that regard. But I thought Henry did a great job. He's back, obviously.
Rodney, if you would hold those thoughts, I just see the clock. We're going to take a quick break. Come back. We're going to talk more about the Alabama linebacker room with Rodney Orr of Tighter Insider after this quick break from our sponsors.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House Equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rodney Orr, let's get back in that linebacker room at Alabama. And by the way, Rodney, Wesley Britt, you remember him. He was on the show with us Friday. He's going to be up on the Spring River canoeing with a bunch of my friends, the big Alabama trip. And at 6'8", about 320, all muscle, of course. It's going to be in the canoe with Bama Boyd. He's going to put him in a turkey chair in the middle of the boat. But I'm thinking Boyd weighs 162, Wesley weighs 321. I think if him in the front of the boat, Boyd's going to be airborne. But, man, I'm telling you what, he's going to be doing some trout fishing. But let's talk about that linebacker room beyond Henry To'oTo'o out of Concord, California.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jalen Moody's a guy that's been around a while at the inside backer spot. Of course, he was behind Christian Harris. He's got some experience. He's played some. When he stepped in at times, he's done really, really well. You remember the Arkansas game in 2020, Christian Harris got injured on the first play. Jalen came in and had a great game, forced some turnovers, made plays. Consistency is the key with him. But there's a young budding star behind him that's really competing, might eventually be the starter this year. Deontay Lawson. He's a redshirt freshman out of Mobile, played for Ronnie Cottrell at Mobile Christian.
Yeah.
And this guy is he is going to be really, really good. Deontay Lawson, obviously some other young players, in the mix, for the future. But those are the three that, right now, as you look at it, that really stand out to you. And then, of course, you got Will Anderson outside. We talked about Will and Dallas Turner and Keanu Coote, Chris Braswell, all those guys. And, there's a lot of guys in the mix. So I think the linebacker spot looks pretty solid right now.
Scary. I mean, and that was a great point about Henry To'oTo'o, because he didn't come in until August, but he'd been under Jeremy Pruitt, so he was very familiar with the system. Frank?
Well, I think Alabama's success, I truly believe, I said this on prior shows, this year it's Alabama's SEC to lose. They're in the driver's seat. You got to play them, and believe me, all of us teams in the West, we're going to give them everything we got. But I think it says lose. I think it really comes down, the success of Alabama is going to come down to what they do on that offensive line. If they can get all that talent that they've brought in through the transfer portal to congeal and play as a unit, I think Alabama's going to be hard to stop. Yeah. However, if you have, like Jimmy said, not that Alabama offensive line that you think of when you think of Nick Saban's, national championship years, which always had that in common. They always had those NFL caliber linemen just road grading people. I think that's where it's going to come down to. And if they get them playing, by week 2 or 3 and playing as the unit that they have the talent to be, I think it's going to be a long year for everybody else. If they don't, then of course, that if Alabama can come back and, have maybe 7 to 10 less points per game, well, then you got a different story. But if Alabama puts that offensive line together, I don't think anybody's going to beat them, including Georgia or A&M.
Well, you can't forget, though, the injury factor. There's no way you can predict those. And we all know, depending on at what position and which player is involved and the length of the time they're going to be out, I mean, that can determine everything. And that's just the one factor that nobody can predict. And you just hope that, you're able to, sidestep those like Alabama was able to do for the most part in 2020.
Rodney.
Agreed.
Yeah. And Rodney, when you look at Alabama, one thing that you think about, they've had some great ones in the past, but special teams, you don't really talk much about them because they score so many touchdowns. It was like when Steve Spurrier was at Florida, the kicker was about as recognizable as Carlton the doorman on the old Rotis show. Is that going to be any different this year?
Talking about special teams.
Yeah, I mean, being the Alabama kicker, it's like, who? You only hear about him like the deep snapper if he makes a mistake.
Well, yeah. Well, Will Reichert is 2 years ago was Mr. Perfect. He didn't miss a field goal all year.
Yeah.
And then I always think about this too, Rob. I mean, look, the Alabama-Auburn history. Down there on the plains what happens. Some weird things can happen down there.
Voodoo, as Jimmy calls it.
Yeah, you saw it last year. I mean, Auburn had Alabama on the ropes, and Reichert stepped up and hit that field goal.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a clutch kick. I mean, how many times has Alabama been haunted by kicks down there? But that was an incredibly clutch kick that he made. He's expected to have a big year, and I tell you, I'm hearing really good things about the progress being made and has been made throughout the spring and now with James Burnip, the punter, who's a guy that came in last year, and once again, he didn't average 50 yards a kick and caught a lot of criticism. But you had to understand, this kid had never, I'm talking about ever, not high school, nothing, had never kicked in a game in his life. And he walks out in front of 100,000 people trying to punt the ball, national TV. I mean, that was a big transition for him. But I heard he's made a lot of progress, so that's encouraging. That's promising. And they've got a new special teams coach, Bowman Hutzler, who also coaches outside linebackers. And Nick Saban seems to be really proud with excited about the things that Hutzler's done so far. Kind of organizing these special teams right now.
And let me tell you, going back to 2011 and our 9-6 epic battle, the game of the century, y'all haven't been really known for your good kicking. So no, you're exactly right. That when y'all can say that an Alabama kicker came in and won the game, that's pretty big.
Yeah. Well, also the overlooked skill that Burnip has too, and it took place in the Iron Bowl last year after the drop snap. Late in the third quarter, they put Burnip in there. And I immediately was no longer worried, because anybody that's played Australian rules football his whole life is not going to have any trouble catching snaps, from any angle or at any speed. And on those Reichert kicks, the field goal Rodney mentioned in overtime, and then, the extra point, you look at it as a foregone conclusion, but when you play at Auburn, nothing's a given. And he made all the holds just flawlessly, so I don't think they're going to have any trouble with that part of the kicking game from now on. And I really thought in the spring he was noticeably better. So hopefully they'll be able to see him progress. But the funny story on that was that I think Ole Miss had offered, and he was ready to go there. And I think they just offered him for 2 years or 3. And then Alabama offered him, I think, the full 4. And that resulted in him coming to Alabama.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's a huge get.
Yeah.
Rodney.
Yeah, he was offered for 3 years. You're right.
Rodney, real quick before we let you go, and I know you got a big day ahead of you. What's the next shoe to drop on the recruiting trail for the class of 23 or 24 or 25 for Alabama?
Yeah. Well, 23, I think the next big thing to happen, and again, you don't know with these recruiting, the way these prospects, you may have someone drop something on Twitter today.
Yeah.
It's totally unexpected. But now I think Miles McVay, the 4-star offensive lineman out of East St. Louis, Illinois, is going to announce on the 11th. What's today? The 8th or 9th? What's today?
9th, yeah.
9th. Okay, so he's announcing in 2 days. And so to be on the 11th. And again, I think Alabama's in great position with him. Oregon, Texas A&M, Missouri, a lot of other schools have been recruiting him extremely hard. But I feel good about him. He's only 6'6", 360. And then I feel that another guy to watch too, that we've been talking about him from way back, is Raymond Polito, a 6'6", 340-pound offensive guard. Probably going to be a guard, could play tackle out of St. John's Bosco in Bellflower, California. he's a guy that wouldn't be surprised if he makes a decision fairly soon. And then a lot of buzz about Kelby Collins, the 4-star defensive lineman out of Gardendale, just 50 miles up the road. Don't forget now, Alabama's already lost a 5-star player, Peter Woods. And I say lost. I don't think it's over. I do think his commitment right now is firm, but the door is never, closed completely. You know how that works.
Yeah.
And then I think Kelby Collins, I think he announces for Florida as we're speaking right now. I think he announces for Florida on Saturday. Highly unusual for Nick Saban to potentially lose 2 kids of that magnitude 50 miles from campus, defensive linemen.
Yeah.
I think Saban's going to be asking why, and he probably already knows why. But don't be surprised if both those guys ultimately end up in the class. We'll see what happens.
One more question before you go. What's the name of that really good place I've been to several times? Is it Ferguson's Cafe in Tuscaloosa that's got such an incredible breakfast?
You know what? I don't go out to breakfast. To be honest with you, you got the read on better than I do, Rob. You know all the SEC towns and every little nook and cranny joint in those towns better than I do.
I'm just trying to remember because I'll ask that. I'll ask Waller, Dr. Waller May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport, our good friend. And I tell you, the reclamation job they did on the outlaw Josie Wales is nothing short of a miracle. Rodney Orr, always love having you on here. Fantastic. We went to Evangelina's restaurant in Tuscaloosa last month with Waller and Susan May. That was OTC, off the chain. It was so good. Met former Alabama offensive lineman out of Brentwood Academy, Josh Swartz, who's an attorney, municipal judge down there. Super nice guy. And looks like he could still line up and play.
Now, and as an LSU guy, I can tell you every bar that's on McFarland. I can give you that sort of reconnaissance.
Well, you know what else?
And by the way, the most activity I ever had on McFarland was the time that I took my buddies in Bengal One, my Georgia buddies, to watch Alabama and Georgia a couple of years ago, and I happened to wear my LSU gear. Oh, my goodness. Right after our national championship, let me tell you what, I had more conversations on McFarland than I could actually handle.
Yeah, I'm telling you what, man. And, we know what also is on McFarland Boulevard, several locations, is the Taco Casa. God, I love that place. But anyway,
yes.
Rodney, tell people how they can follow you. You don't go out for breakfast because you're working all the time. And I talked to our friend Sunday night for a long time, and we just got a lot of respect for what you do because you keep the Alabama fans informed. I know John Turner, Jack Turner, so many friends of mine, Clay Bethel, subscribe to Tider Insider. You do a great job. Let people know how they can follow you. And as always, we appreciate you taking time to join us on Sidelines. We really, really, really mean that.
No, hey, I appreciate being on with you guys and Frank and Jimmy too. And it's TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year. You can get instant access with your credit card if you prefer. There is an address there to send a check. Gives you all our premium information, but also our all sports forum, which that's our community of Alabama fans. It kind of gets wild and crazy sometimes, but there's a lot of information, a lot of exchange, a lot of those types of good nuggets there on our forum on TiderInsider.com. And hey, tonight live, our TV show at 6:30. Tider Insider TV goes throughout most of the state of Alabama. We'll have it posted after the show on the front page of TiderInsider.com.
Well, listen, always enjoy having you on. And again, Gary Harris and you tonight, 6:30 WVUA. Rodney, have a great week. Talk to you next Tuesday.
Okay, guys. Take care.
All right,
bro. Hey, we'll have a bowl of gumbo waiting for you in November.
That's right. Hey, Olin Buchanan is on the line with us right now. Hey, folks, all over the state of Texas, the cheers of Gig 'em Aggies. They're all doing them. It's the coolest thing right now since Shake, Rattle, and Roll. Olin Buchanan of TexAgs.com is on with us. And Olin, we're getting a little excited about college football. A&M picked really high. I'm kind of, I'm going, all right, well, they were 8-4 last year. That you can't look out of the rearview mirror when you're picking for the upcoming season. You can look at it and say, well, this happened and that happened, but coaches get paid a lot of money to make improvements. So far from the practicing that you've seen, what is the takeaway so far? And I know that everybody's talking about this freshman class coming in, but we all know, we've been around a day or two. It's the veterans that'll lead the team. And, you don't want to rely on freshmen, but Jimbo in year 5, his expectations and the fans' expectations are really high.
Well, they should be after 5 years. I think, again, we talked about this before. I think they would have been had a really big year last season if not for the plague of injuries. And we talked about this before. Everyone focused on quarterback, but they didn't start 2 freshmen in the offensive line out of design. Things like that. But that's part of football. And so, what's the old Bill Parcells line? You are what your record says you are. Do I think A&M is going to be significantly better this season? I do, but you got to prove it. I think everybody thinks they're going to be better in August. One of the reasons is some of the guys from that freshman class. No program wants to rely too heavily on the incoming freshmen, no matter how highly regarded and how highly ranked they were. But if you can find a guy or two to pick and choose, we're hoping that Evan Stewart has the same kind of impact as a true freshman that Christian Kirk did. But what if he has the same kind of impact that Demond Demas did, which was absolutely nothing? So, you feel good about some of the new guys like Walter Nolan. Is he going to come in and is he going to make the impact that Myles Garrett made? Well, you hope so, but he might not. So, but he might not have to, because they have a lot of a lot of talent at the defensive end position, although unproven. So there's a lot of reasons to believe that A&M could be significantly better this year, and there's, quite frankly, some reasons to be apprehensive. But seeing these guys close up, I tend to think that A&M will have a year that they might have had last year had they been healthier.
You think about last year, A&M lost at home to Mississippi State. You go, wow, how'd that happen? Mississippi State's a good team, but if you're looking,
A&M let that one get away.
Yeah, and
I'll tell you how that happened. That happened when you 4 times in the red zone and 3 times you kick field goals.
Yeah. And what's funny? People will say, who's going to win the game? Well, the team that scores the most touchdowns. Well, no, because a lot of teams will have to rely on field goals way too much. And most games come down in really tight competition with equal talent and coaching. It's usually going to be, 3 points, 6 points. That right there is the difference. Let's pause for a moment. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back with Olin Buchanan of TexAgs.com on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back with you. Olin Buchanan making great points about this Texas A&M team and coming into the 22 season. And you look at games last year, how'd they get away from you? And then some that you won. How'd we do that? Typically, record is it's just what it is, and nothing you can do about it, obviously. But what are the two areas, offensive and defensively, that A&M at the top of the list has to improve upon for them to get into the 11 or 12 regular season win bracket?
Offensively, red zone efficiency. A&M was like, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but they were like 30th, something around there in scoring in the red zone. But when you break it down and at touchdowns, then they plunged down to around 100. So you got to take those red zone opportunities and turn them into touchdowns. That's number one on offense, because you move the ball. They just get close, and you can come up with your different theories on why they didn't turn them into touchdowns, but they didn't. Defense, I don't know if it's something they need to do differently as much as something they need to figure out a way to maintain, and that's maintain the pass rush. They had 39 sacks last year. Now, most everybody will take that, and on top of that, they got to they pressured the quarterback, tons of times. But I think something like 35 of those 39 sacks were registered by guys who are no longer here. So are you going to be able to maintain that pass rush? I think that's the big question on defense.
Yeah. 35 of those 39 sacks are gone.
Something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Something like that. Again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I was looking them up, and I think that's about accurate. DeMarvin Leal had like 8.5, and Michael Clemens had 7, and Tyree Johnson, I think, had about 7, maybe 8. And then some other guys who are gone here, like Leon O'Neal had 1 as a blitz. Some other guys 2 and 3 here and there. I think the guy who's a returning leader in sacks had 2 last year. So they're going to be looking for Tumi Sayadillier and Fidel Diggs and Walter Nolan and Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, some of these guys that were all really highly regarded, highly recruited guys. And this year and last year, to come in and pick up some of that slack, and that's what happens a lot of times. You're not good until you get your chance, and now they're going to get their chance, and we'll find out how good they are.
Yeah, guys definitely practice differently when they know they're going to get playing time, but if you don't practice hard, you won't get any playing time. But Frank Duffy is back, and he had 3 sacks last year at Kroger.
Hey, I had 5 sacks on St. Patrick's Day alone during the parade, just by itself.
There you go. Okay, Dad, I got enough money for a hamburger.
Hey, man, you kind of lose your balance when you're walking about 3 miles under the influence.
That's
but
right.
Hey, no, I got to ask you, Owen. I think we're gonna see what Texas A&M, the trajectory of y'all season, when y'all play Arkansas in Dallas. With what Sam Pittman has done in Arkansas, they're going to be looking at that as a crossroads game as well. Yes, you got a couple of games at home, and App State, that somebody has to get your attention. And y'all got that game against Miami, which I think Texas A&M is going to handle pretty easily. The success of that first month and those games, because y'all go right into an away schedule at Stark Vegas, Alabama, and South Carolina. What are you seeing for that Arkansas game? A game that Arkansas probably played y'all the best out of everybody last year. In all honesty, I think that was the game that y'all would probably admit that y'all really got beat in. Where do you see that matchup coming in early, and do you see that as the launching pad for a really special season, in College Station?
It's important, no doubt about it. Arkansas beat A&M on the line of scrimmage in that game, and there was no 2 ways about it. They especially defense was beating the A&M offensive line the whole game. And yet it was still a touchdown game in the fourth quarter, and A&M had the ball. And then, we've talked about it before, a quarterback throws an interception off his center's helmet. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. So that's an important game. There's no doubt about it. And quite frankly, you have to respect what Sam, you have to admire what Sam Pittman has done.
Good word.
Arkansas.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I mean, to take over just the colossal mess that Chad Morris left, and to win 9 games, just 2 years later, that's admirable. I can't come up with another word. Sam's done a heck of a job. He's got a heck of a coaching staff. So it's not going to be easy, but it's rarely easy against Arkansas. They seem to play really well against A&M. Even when you go back when A&M won those 9 games in a row over Arkansas, a lot of those games were lost by Arkansas as much as they were won by A&M. So I think that's really important. But I'll say this. The game, at least in my opinion, that kind of sets the trajectory for A&M season will be Mississippi State. If you'll go back and look at what's happened with A&M, especially in years when they go to Starkville, that's kind of defined or set the tone for how that season was going to look. I can remember a few years ago, A&M was 4th in the first college football playoff ranking.
2014.
They go to play Mississippi State, which is I think it was 2016, but they go to play but I don't know. They go to play Mississippi State, but what's 4-6 or 4-7? A&M Mississippi State beats them, and then A&M proceeds to lose the rest of their games.
Unraveled.
Somebody like that. They did. And then in 2014, A&M's undefeated. They're 5-0 going to Starkville.
Yeah.
And they lose, and they fall apart again. So, and there's other times that last year, I think they looked like, okay, they dealt with the Arkansas loss. They're bouncing back. They're actually moving the ball really well, and then they find a way to lose. And it would turn out to be a mediocre season. It had a chance to be a really good one even after that. But gosh, if you close out that win at home, so I always look at Mississippi State, especially when you have to go to Starkville, because that's and they went there and won after losing to Alabama. I think after they beat Florida in 2020, but then they go to Mississippi State, and it's not easy, but they win that game, and they go on to finish 9-1. So I always look at what's going to happen in Starkville. Those blasted cowbells. If the cowbells are loud, it's going to be a bad year for A&M. If the cowbells aren't so loud, it's kind of like Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
So you can focus on what happens at Starkville and have a pretty good idea of what kind of season A&M has, at least going by history.
I agree, and don't get me riled up on those cowbells, because I'm telling you what, the boys in Birmingham at the conference office have teeth on everything else, and how Mississippi State gets away with that foreign noisemaker BS is beyond me. I mean, for years I've been railing on this. I mean, we were going to look the other way, like the inspector in Casablanca, that there's no gambling going on in the back room, and he gets handed his 50,000 francs as he leaving the casino. To me, that is the most insane thing. How the conference can look beyond that. Incredible. If we did that at any one of the other schools, all hell would break loose.
Well,
to me, I'm still shocked.
They got outlawed in 1975, but that was temporary. They came back.
I think it's fun.
I do too.
I do. I just
until it's 3rd and 15, and you're back in your own area, and it's like, and it's funny. Yeah, it's also funny when they come up on the scoreboard. Please now quiet your cowbells. Brother, if there's a decibel, those damn things get louder.
Jimmy likes them. I love them. I love those cowbells, Frank, for the simple reason that they're a quirky tradition. They're weird. they're like people wearing tinfoil hats and, antlers and shit when they get liquored up. I don't know, but there's
Great. We got a tradition too. I'm gonna let Mike the Tiger out his cage, and we'll see how that works for the opposing crowd.
Well, there you go.
Maybe you should put a bell around Mike's neck.
Yeah, there you go. Like one of them little cat bells. Let Mike go. Let's see how those bells work.
Hey, Olin, we were dove hunting down in Lambert, Mississippi, October 4th, 2014. That's the day that Mississippi State in Starkville, 2014, beat A&M. And then Ole Miss beat number 1 ranked Alabama. And that was considered probably the greatest day of college football in the state of Mississippi ever. Remember in 1977 when L.Q. Smith ran back a kickoff for 150 yards against Notre Dame down in Jackson, one of the hottest stadiums on earth. But that was a big day. And you're right. That is the canary in the coal mine for what kind of season A&M is going to have, Jimmy. I think you would agree.
Yeah, I mean, and I think they'd like to settle a score from the game last year in College Station. I mean, but college football is just so crazy. I mean, how on earth could anybody picture an A&M team that played the way they did late in the game against Mississippi State, and 7 days later, have the type of offensive performance they had against Bama, and of course, Calzada had the career game, and you just never know, And another place that A&M's had some problems is Oxford. They've had a lot of good teams come over there and just run into a buzzsaw or just not play particularly well, and come out on the short end. I mean, in short, this is just a brutal league, and I've said it so many times. Again, I've never seen a game won before it was played. You just have to be prepared. You got to be focused. And if you're not, and you're playing a team that might not have a great record at the time, but you catch them on a day that they have their A game, you can find yourself in trouble. So, anytime you're playing a conference game in this league, you just have to be ready to play. That's what it comes down to.
And especially in those snake pits in the West, man, you roll into any one of them. Vaught Hemingway, Mississippi State, Arkansas. You go out to College Station and not ready to be ready to play, you're gonna get your head handed to you.
Yeah, and hey, Olin, Dave Cody, our friend, is listening out in Bellingham, Washington. Longtime sports anchor there in Austin.
Washington. Right?
Yeah, he's listening. So hello, Dave Cody. Olin says hello, and he's the one who told me. I told him I'm sitting next to royalty at SEC Media Days. Olin Buchanan and Kirk Bowles and the no tie rule. And like you said the other day, I ain't wearing socks. But look, man, tell us, Olin, about what it's like. We just got a few minutes left. A&M now. They had for 10 years, the exclusive rights to tell these recruits, hey, come to A&M, you're playing in the SEC. What's it like now that Texas can say that?
Well, it's going to be I guess, you lose an advantage. I still think there's a lot more advantages to come into Texas A&M. First of all, just look at, you can play for the guy who won a national championship as a head coach, or you can play for a guy that was part of a staff that won one.
Yeah.
I would think that that's quite the draw. I think A&M's, the fan support you get is going to be more passionate. I think really, quite frankly, all over college football, it's going to come down to, it looks like it's coming down to who's willing to pony up more money for people. I know that's not what you're supposed to say. And that was not the case for A&M last year, no matter how many people want to believe that. But I think it's becoming a really just the truth in college football now. It's always been there, but now it's, I think now it's more blatant. But, and quite frankly, A&M's not playing the game as well as some of its rivals is right now. But one thing I know about A&M, they typically they'll play the game the way whatever the rules are made to be played by. So I think that, but Texas, Oklahoma, A&M, they've always tried to recruit for virtually the same players. A&M has no doubt had an advantage because they've been in the SEC. I guess now you got to say, we didn't lose to Kansas.
Yeah. I got to say this, I watched that documentary about the recruitment of Marcus Dupree, and the Oklahoma coach that was recruiting him and the Texas coach recruiting him, but we're both staying in the same hotel in Philadelphia, Mississippi. And they kept talking about Marcus had a Uncle Curly. What would Uncle Curly do with NIL, folks? Woo! How crazy would it be recruiting somebody back in those days with NIL? Man, I mean, but you know what?
Well, they had NIL. They just didn't. They just didn't call it that.
Well, it was called it was called UTT, under the table. It's just
it wasn't illegal at the time.
Well,
right.
Yeah, but it was crazy. Hey, Olin, look, we're about out of time. I tell you what, man, I love having you on here. You got a lot of Charles Kuralt in you. What is it
you're
about?
Giving me way too much.
Well, but think about what I'm saying is you're very, very smart. You really know A&M football. But we would all go crazy if we let every little detail bother us. But man, you lighten everything up. I can tell you that, because you're smart.
Instead of on the road with Charlie, it's on the road with Reveille.
Yeah, that's right. On the road with Reveille. But Olin, we got about 40.
That's a very well behaved dog. I can do that.
Yeah,
that's right.
Hey, Olin, we've got about 45 seconds. Tell people how they can follow you, and let's do this again next week. And as always, thank you so much for your time on Sidelines. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. We'd appreciate it if you could give us a look at TexAgs.com. We think we're the premier outlet for Texas A&M sports coverage. So if you give us a look, TexAgs.com, I always say it's just the abbreviated version of Texas Aggies. TexAgs.com. You can follow us on Twitter at that same handle, and you can follow me on Twitter. I don't hide behind any false handles. It's just my name. So I have to be responsible for it, but it's just my name, Olin Buchanan. You can spell Olin Buchanan. You can follow me on Twitter, and I appreciate it if you give me a follow.
Thanks so much.
No nom de plumes there. No nom de plume.
Hey, thank you so much, everybody. We most often see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and help somebody with the expectation of nothing in return, and we live in the greatest country in the world. We'll see you tomorrow.